Hey guys, how's it going? This is Natenator, and I just want to say how damn thankful I am to each and every one of you guys. I'm just going to quickly put an annotation here to skip to the reading, since this is probably going to be a fairly long intro, just in case you'd rather get right onto the punch. Psh, there it is. Okay, anyway, so just a few days ago, we passed 5,000 subscribers. That's truly amazing to me, and I really can't express my gratitude in words, you know? It's somewhere I couldn't have imagined myself when I started seriously working on this channel late 2012. We've been through some tough times when I got busy with work and school and stuff, but everyone has stuck with me, and just to get to this point, all I can say is thank you, one and all. I'm truly humbled. So, first, I must apologize for being late on this video. We're, already past, almost past 100 subscribers, more than the milestone already, which is goddamn ridiculous, you know? I was busy with work from my university, and I didn't have time to record and edit while I was working, so that would explain my tardiness. Now, the special part in this video is that I wrote another creepypasta just to read for all of you guys, you know? I wrote it in advance, so I just didn't have time to record it, which was a pain because I really, really wanted to put it up for you guys, and it may have seemed like I was neglecting you, but now you know that that's not the case. Anyway, the story is based on a game I played a little while ago, and it's a true story. So I have a feeling that you guys won't believe me or whatever, but I'll put a link to the game that's the subject of the story in the description, just in case you want to try it out for yourself. So, but either way, I filmed myself playing the game, and I edited in over the reading just for your entertainment, and hopefully you'll be able to get the same feels that I experienced if you aren't able to play the game yourself. So I tried to recreate the experience as I wrote it, but I think there may be some variations, you know? So I apologize on that part. Anyway, I'd like to formally present to you all my creepypasta, Lost Route. So as always, turn out the lights, get comfortable, and let the story begin. Everything I'm about to tell you is completely true. This isn't a story of bootleg video games or hacks that have been lost to the mysteries of time. No, this is a story that happened to me and my friend a little over a week ago. If you're here for a story about strange happenings in real life caused by that of a video game, I'm sorry to tell you that you won't find satisfaction in this story either. What I can tell you is that a seemingly innocent video game that I found turned out to be quite a bit more sinister than me or my friend could have ever anticipated. Let me start from the beginning, about a month before my friend came around to play the game with me. My birthday is on the 11th of March. I'd just turned 19, and I was expecting a new laptop for my birthday. I was expecting it because I'd had to buy it online with my parents' money to give me, since they aren't too tech savvy. Well, that's what I'd assumed anyway. When my birthday finally arrived, I had not just one present to open, but two. The first, of course, was, big surprise, the laptop I'd ordered for myself. The other present, however, I had no idea what to expect. At first glance, it was a large box, concealed with a colourful wrapping paper signed, "To Nathan." I looked up to my parents with a questioning look. What could be inside? They simply looked on with a built-up excitement and gestured for me to open it. I was really curious by this point, and so I began to tear away the paper, feeling the weight of the package inside. My jaw dropped open when I saw what was inside. It was an Oculus Rift. Yes, I'm talking about the virtual reality gaming headset that you see professional YouTubers playing all sorts of fun and scary games on. It was right there, on top of my now trembling lap. I have no idea how they knew of such a thing, or how they managed to figure out how to buy it online, but I was so surprised that I nearly fell out of the chair I was sitting in. I barely had time to thank them before I was assaulting my computer, ripping out cords and finding space to plug in the necessary ones to run the Oculus. With a bit of fuss and a few hiccups, the Oculus finally powered up, and I was so excited to start playing a few games in it. I downloaded a few to get me started. One was an introduction to the immersive power the Oculus had, which completely blew my mind, and another was a wild roller coaster simulator that left me feeling a bit nauseous. It was at this point that I decided it was finally time. Time for what, you ask? Time for a horror game, of course. It was time to put the power of the Oculus to the test. I wanted to scare myself so badly that I would never want to play it again. I wanted to see just what the feeling was like in person, rather than simply having it described to me by all those YouTube Let's Players out there. There's no way you could understand what it feels like without an Oculus. You know the drill. But I finally had my hands on one, and I could finally see for myself. I went through the list of games online and played several. The most notable one I noticed was titled Dread Halls, where I found myself screaming like I was a child again and tearing the headset from my face when I was jump scared after being chased through the dark cobblestone maze by a terrifying monster. I went for a break at this point because I was sweating bullets and I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. I hadn't lost the nerve to continue though, so I went straight back to the list of games to play online. That was the first time I came upon it. A game filed under the horror genre known as Lost Root. I clicked into it because it appeared different to the many other generic titles on the list. At the time, there wasn't much information on it. No one had commented on the game yet, and I paid no attention to the description. I was too busy looking at the screenshot posted of the game. It appeared to be a first-person shooter, but the character was inside a car. I was interested to see what it would be like to play a driving game, and at the same time I'd get somewhat of a horror experience. 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Well, it wasn't too long after the download finished that I'd booted up the game for the first time, and I donned the headset to begin the experience. It started off quite nicely. I was standing in a sunny area, closed in by fences with trees and buildings nearby, making a surprisingly peaceful starting area for a horror game. Getting my bearings, I saw a sign nearby that listed the achievements in the game, which I disregarded once I saw the sign beside it, telling me that the game will start once I touched the bus. Looking around, I saw the bus, a little way away, and as I approached it, I could hear metal music blasting from it, which got louder as I approached. An incredibly strange introduction for a horror game indeed, I thought to myself. Nevertheless, I enjoyed the idea that it was a bit more chipper than the last one that had me wetting my pants, and so I headed into the bus. The screen faded to black, and when it came back into view, I was looking at the same view the display picture for the game had on the website. I was sitting in a car. Of course, I quickly familiarized myself with the operation of it, and was rolling off before I knew it. It was surprisingly real. All of the rearview mirrors operated properly, reflecting what was behind me as I looked at them. I could do a lot of things inside the car too, so I was happy with the developer for putting in so much thought to it. I could turn on the radio, I could even turn the hazard lights on and off for God's sake. This was amazing. But there was also something really strange about the game. When I played it, I just felt something off. I can't quite explain the feeling properly, but I'll try. It was just a feeling of emptiness. There was no ambient soundtrack or effects beside the quiet rustling of the car's engine. I couldn't see any other people around, and yet, as I drove on, I noticed many broken down cars. Let me also tell you, it was a bright day in the game, Not nighttime, not even afternoon, so this made the feeling even stronger in the back of my mind. There should be people around. Heck, just birds or something, but no, there's no one else around but me. It was quite unnerving, and the game hadn't even so much as jump scared me yet. As I slowly made my way around the bends of the road, something ominous was occurring. I could see a shadow creeping up along the side of the road, as if a cloud was beginning to cover up the sun as I was driving. Watching it, the color of the sky had also begun to shift to darker tones of blue, until, within moments, the sun was completely gone, and I was left in complete darkness. At this point in the game, I was feeling more than uncomfortable for reasons I couldn't explain. I was feeling slightly nauseous. Not the kind brought on from the spirals of the roller coaster simulator, but more from a feeling of actual distaste for the game. The light, when it was there, felt slightly unnatural, and the quietness of the game was also unnatural. Everything about the game just felt wrong, and so I quit the game and moved on to the next one. It was as simple as that. I didn't even give the game a second thought. Until about a month later, and that was when my friend came around to try out the Oculus. So we jump ahead here from the first time I played that strange game, to the point that my friend came around to play. As soon as we sat down to the computer, I asked him what he would like to play. He answered without hesitation that he wanted to play a horror game, because he too had been watching YouTubers play scary games online. I told him of the few I'd played in my first few weeks of owning the Oculus, and we went through them one by one. I let him enjoy the scares first, since I had played them all before and I wanted to save ruining it for him on his first time inside the Oculus. I laughed at him as he jumped out of his seat in many of the games that I showed him, and we had a terrifyingly good time. It wasn't until late at night that an idea occurred to me. I should show him that game I played all that time ago when I first got the Oculus. So I told him I had an interesting game to show him, one which was different to the ones we'd been playing so far. I told him it was supposed to be a horror game, but from what I'd played, it really just felt unnatural as opposed to scary. This piqued his interest. Being a fan of the paranormal board on 4chan, unnatural was right up his alley. So he was more than happy to explore the game to depths that neither of us could have expected from it. So, I located the game files I still had from when I downloaded it before, and booted up the game for him to play. Now I will detail what we experienced together that night. We spawned into the game and I directed him to go and touch the bus to start the real game. He made a comment that the music blasting from the bus sucked pretty bad, since he isn't a fan of metal music. This wasn't much of a deal right now, but it would be something that began all of the creepy events that occurred in our playthrough of the game. The screen faded out like it had before, and we found ourselves in the driver's seat of the car. My friend, being the curious and outgoing type, wanted to tweak and play with every little accessible function of the car to get the full experience, as he so put it, from the game. While playing with things inside the car, he found many things that I had simply overlooked in my first playthrough. He found you could turn on the headlights, you could pop the hood of the car. That reason will become evident later on. In fact, if you looked at the car door, you could even get out of the car itself and walk around. That was something I didn't even know. We were both trespassing on unfamiliar territory, but we were enjoying the adventure. Now outside the car, he walked our character around the side to see that initially, the car we had started in had been pulled over by a police vehicle. Moving closer and looking through the windows of the police car, there was no one inside. Normally, I wouldn't have had a second thought about something like this, but my friend, being the inquisitive type, questioned why we were pulled over in the first place if there was no one inside the police vehicle to begin with. So that left us with a single conclusion. that someone had been inside that car before we'd been pulled over. Following that logic, we then had to ask, where did they go? Leaving that question better off unanswered, we moved back to our car. On the way to the driver's seat, we found that the boot could be opened. Popping it open, we both peered inside and saw that there was a flashlight that could be equipped and a spare tire beside it. After taking the flashlight, he began to stare intently into the boot, going quiet. I told him to close it and get going. I remembered how dark it had gotten before, and I felt more secure if we were inside the car once it got dark out. But he just shook his head and motioned for me to look closer. Deep within the boot of the car, behind the spare tire, I could make out a strange grey object, contrasting against the black interior of the boot. It was then that I realized just what that object was. It was a human skeleton. I looked at my friend as he whistled a breath of disbelief. But we hadn't even scratched the surface of the creepiness this game had to offer us yet. Getting over the surprise of the rotted body in the boot, he closed it and moved back around to slide into the driver's seat. It was then that we decided it was time to begin the exploration in the game, and so he started up the engine. We'd barely started moving when I saw that shadow creeping steadily along the road as it had done before. It was already getting dark. I quickly advised my friend to hit on the headlights so he wouldn't get lost in the black night. Surprisingly, the lights were quite powerful and illuminated most of what was in front of us as we drove along. The road snaked around with a wall of earth to our left and a sheer 30-foot drop on the right. Down that way, there seemed to be water, and in the distance, an eerie lighthouse towered against the bleak night. The light at the top, however, was not the usual white, but a strange green light. To the left, in the space between the road and the wall, were wrecked cars and small monuments. Still, there were no signs of life. There weren't even any signs of death either. There was only that which was left behind by what seemed like the recently vacated. It was chilling, feeling like the only person on the planet. I knew this feeling, and my friend nodded in his agreement. It was too quiet. That was when he pulled over and looked down to turn on the radio. I asked him why, and he replied saying that it was better than the silence, and I agreed. The small radio screen indicated that we were listening to 99.3 FM. He immediately threw a disgusted look at the screen, as the metal music from earlier blasted through the car. If you can recall, he wasn't a big fan of metal, and so he hit the seek button on the radio. That was something I hadn't noticed earlier. This time it shuffled to a station numbered 88.0 AM. The station brought forth some beeping and static noises. He tried the other stations, but it seemed that there were only 3 stations coded into the game, one being the metal station he refused to listen to, another which played nothing but white noise, and then there was this station, 88.0 AM. He left it on that station as noise to fill in the silent void, but it quickly became apparent that it was no regular radio station. This particular station was quite eerie in itself, playing all manners of screeching noises, off-key fanfares, beepings and clickings. He was just about to give in and turn it off as we continued driving, when the noises stopped and were replaced by a voice. This was one of the scariest points in the game for us. The voice was a mature female voice, speaking through what seemed like a blurred signal in a language that appeared to be German. The voice droned in a monotone fashion before we recognized some of the words that she was saying. They were numbers. It was immediately obvious to both of us that we were listening to a numbers station. The woman continued to rally off the numbers at interval in German, before going silent and being replaced by the strange tones and eerie electronic melodies. This time, they seemed much less innocent and much more sinister. As he continued to drive, he mentioned that he was getting goosebumps. Feeling my own arms, I was too. At this point in the game, a warning message appeared on the screen, informing us that our character was getting tired and would pass out soon. We didn't really know what this would mean in the game in terms of whether it would be game over or not, but it motivated us to move faster along the road. The road itself twisted and turned in the dark. It was hard to make out much more than what was directly in front of us. It then finally straightened out, after having spiraled around a cliff of some form to connect onto a fairly wide and tall bridge that crossed over a road we'd passed along far below. As we traversed it in the dark, for a split second to the left, something was illuminated in the headlights on top of one of the short pillars holding the railings on the side of the bridge in place. Hitting the brakes, we reversed the car back to see what it was. The thing on the side of the bridge came back into view, and we stopped the car to inspect what had caught our attention. To our surprise and also relief, it was a woman. I yelled at my friend to get out and try to interact with her, and so he did. Stepping out of the car, he walked over to the woman, who now appeared to be contemplating suicide as she stepped nearer to the edge of the pillar, and then backed off as if gathering courage. As we got close enough to make out her full figure, she stepped forward once more, but this time she did not step back. Instead, kneeling down and letting herself fall off the edge of the bridge. My friend shot forward to try and stop her, but there was nothing he could do but watch as she vanished into the darkness below silently. Once again, we fell silent. This game was ridiculously dark in nature for what it advertised itself as. We'd been introduced to the first and only other human in this strange world, and they had gone as quickly as they had appeared. We had nothing left to do now but to get back in the car and continue on this eerie adventure. As he started up the car again, we continued listening to the chilling tones of the numbers station that seemed to change the further we delved along the road. I wanted to ask him to turn it off, because I was beginning to lose my nerve with this game, but I held my tongue, curiosity getting the better of me. This was when the road ahead was surrounded in darkness, as a tunnel appeared before us out of sight. My friend swallowed nervously as he drove the car down into the mouth of the mountain before us. We'd barely driven for a few seconds into the tunnel before something dropped from the roof of the tunnel and crashed into the car. This caused both of us to jump and the car swerved out of control. When he regained control of the wheel, he began stammering loudly, asking me what the hell just happened. It was the first time the game had jump-scared us, but once again, this particular game had done it in a different way. There was no loud noise, no sudden flashes on the screen. It was just that the suspense built from the whole unnatural feel of the game made anything slightly out of place appear worse than it should have been. It took a while to recover our senses that this was just a game. But even to me, who wasn't even wearing the Oculus at the time, it felt like this was all happening in reality. I couldn't even begin to imagine how much more terrifying this ordeal must have been for my friend. The rest of our playthrough will be detailed from my own experience, because at this point, my friend claimed that he was experiencing heavy motion sickness and required some time to recover. This is a common occurrence when playing with an Oculus Rift, and so I wouldn't account this to a part of the game affecting him. But either way, we continued on. Exiting the tunnel from where my friend had left off, I followed the road toward what looked like the first sign of proper civilization we'd seen, apart from that strange and ominous green lighthouse that appeared in our field of vision every now and then along the road. What I'd come across was a gas station, doubling as a motel. I was deeply pleased to see the lights on inside the building, and felt a little bit of comfort in the idea that we might not be alone after all. It turned out that I was more wrong than ever. Parking the car beside one of the pumps, I exited the vehicle and ran over to the building, hoping for someone to be inside to maybe explain something to me, or even just offer some comfort. But I should have known better. The inside of the gas station was as deserted as the rest of this world. Approaching the counter, I was able to pay for gas and pick up a key for one of the rooms in the motel out the back. At least I'd be able to fill up the tank, which had been running precariously low, and at the same time get some rest before we passed out. Heading back outside, I clicked the pump to start the refueling process, and while that went on, I began the walk toward the motel rooms behind the station. Looking through the windows of the rooms with my flashlight as I passed, there was not a single other person to see, and all the lights were off. Once again, I should have anticipated this, but I found myself nervous of this place, and wanted to simply find my room and fall asleep to escape this perpetual darkness. It didn't take long before I was prompted to unlock one of the doors to find myself within a tiny room with a bed in one corner and a desk on the other. A small bathroom connected just in front of the front door. I certainly wouldn't call it cozy, but it felt safe. Closing the door behind me, I walked to the bed and pressed the action button to sleep. Now, when I awoke in the game, I forget quite what happened. However, I do know that there was an animal skull placed on the bed Godfather style, and a message written on the wall behind the bed, which detailed some warning for me to leave. It was unnerving, sure, but after what we'd been through before, I simply dismissed it and headed to the car. The rest of the story here is quite generic. I won't bother you with the details of the game. There was a section of the road that caused the car to act up, and when you got out of the car to fix it, a bunch of what seemed like mutated spiders would come at you. They were gathered around a crashed helicopter in a small ravine of sorts. I wouldn't worry about this section, nothing paranormal about it. Just some scripted stuff that I wouldn't question in other video games. More driving, another dark tunnel like the one before. It wasn't for a few minutes of driving around the twisted road, passing abandoned cars and even a flipped tanker, that a tree on the side of the road fell down in front of the car and caused the game to end with a chirpy victory screen. What an ending, huh? After all that creepy stuff, it just ends like that. Well, let's just say that's not quite the end. A couple of days after we completed the game together, I decided to play it by myself. One more time, just to see if there was anything we'd missed. And I think I discovered the creepiest part about the game in its entirety. Toward the end of the road, where the tree usually falls down and blocks the path, for some strange reason, I decided to ditch the car and see if I could walk around the tree before the victory screen ended the game. To my surprise, without the car, the tree that was scripted to fall didn't. I was able to keep walking further along the road. And that's exactly what I did. I followed the road in the dark with my flashlight at the ready, walking along the barren road, wondering what I might find. Would it be an Easter egg or even a special item? Maybe even a way off this forsaken island? No, it was nothing that innocent. What I came across when I turned the last corner on the road was something that didn't really scare me at first until I let it sink in. What I saw was the flashing lights of the police car in the same valley area I had started in. This place that we were in. There was no escape. The player was already doomed to be banished to an eternity in this land, devoid of any form of life from the very beginning. to be forever isolated and alone. It is a graphical visualization of purgatory. The title of the game truly is fitting after all.